actively deny or try to rewrite in our heads to make the world somehow fit what we want it to be, or we constantly argue with the fact that it's not. And this can be really difficult because we're constantly engaged with stories that are not ours. Stories that have been handed down from generation to generation. And not just stories from our families, but stories of our society, our culture, the values of our economic system. We would rather suffer and embrace the stories we have of ourselves than engage with reality as it is. Because if we don't, then we're going to have to face the reality of our lack of a lot of control that we think we have in shaping reality. Most of the stories that we embrace that we have a hard time letting go are the stories that somehow, if I do the right thing, say the right thing, be the right person, well, then I will be acceptable, and then I will be lovable. And until I do all those things, there's something inherently wrong with me. That I am inherently unlovable, unredeemable. That I inherently have some flaw that makes me destined to be alone. We resist not only in our mind, but we resist in our body. But I'm here to tell you that this is all not reality. The Buddha Dharma teaches us that all of our suffering is caused by resistance to what is and our unwillingness to accept things that we experience in everyday life. And what do we experience continually every day more than ourselves? We are constantly interacting with ourselves on a daily basis, experiencing this thing we call self, this thing I call Christopher, and the myriad of stories and intricacies that revolve around supporting that identity up. But here's the rub. For all the time I spend with Christopher, for all the time I spend thinking about Christopher, I don't know who in the fuck I am. And I mean that. I mean that. I mean, I through the practice, I have a greater insight, but I still don't know. And I'm still learning who I am. Most of what I know about myself are all the inherited stories. And some of the new ones that I'm rewriting on a constant basis. So back to this as-is badge. So Frank Ostanesky was with his daughter, and they like to go vintage shopping in San Francisco. And he said, he was talking about his daughter. His daughter was trying on clothes, and while she was, he was looking around at all the different clothes on the rack, looking for the next cool find. And the movie does that. It's really fun. And he noticed that all of the shirts and dresses and everything had a little tear somewhere. It had a missing button or an out of a place stain. And each one was somehow not perfect. And one of the stores they were at, every single shirt or every article of clothing had this tag hung on it, and the tag would say the price, and on the back it would say, as is. Okay? As is. And I like what he says. He goes, I like these tags. I think we should hang them around ourselves and each other, like Christmas tree ornaments. Okay? So that's where I got the idea. And we're doing that for each other today, as is. Okay? He goes on to say, what a beautiful gift to accept ourselves and others and our circumstances as is, with all the beauty, imperfections, and challenges that make up this very human life of ours. So when you first put on the name tag to say as is, what were some of the thoughts you had? What were some of the things you were thinking? Do I have to do this?
I kind of followed the phrase up with where is, as is where is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I woke up and looked in the mirror and thought, do I really want to be seen like this? I'll just put on a hat and put on some little clothes and whatever. So, this was perfect.
Awesome. Yes.
So when you say beliefs, acceptance as you are, there's a duality to that. There's the duality of your beliefs of who you think you are and your flaws, or who you really are. So you inherit those beliefs of I'm fucked up, or I'm a bad person. So what are you accepting?
We'll get to that.
I thought it was weird how they're all the same. There's no individual names, it's just all as is. One.
The oneness of all things, non-duality.
I was thinking the name thing. I was thinking, why do we as a culture think it's so important that we know someone's name? I can often be on a plane ride or, be in someone's circle and know a lot about them for several hours, and then it occurs to me after I leave, I don't even know their name. And then I think, what about the first name? Like, I don't even value them. So it goes along with that. Like, it doesn't really matter what our names are. It matters who, like what our soul is about and what each person's journey is.
To me, it's very present. As is means right now. It doesn't mean past. It means now.
Yeah. Good. Anything else?
Christopher?
Yeah.
I actually thought of an Ani DeFranco song, if anyone knows it, As Is. And I'll read, there's a little part. She says, because when I look around, I think this is good enough. And I try to laugh at whatever life brings. Because when I look down, I just miss all the good stuff. And when I look up, I just trip over things. And then a little while later, she says, when I say I'll take it, I mean as is. And then she says, as is, a million times. But,
Want to sing it?
Ani DeFranco! Look it up. I'll post it. It's such a good song. But I kind of, my awareness with as is this might seem shallow, but towards the weather. I've always been one that hates winter, and seriously, I say, like, this is the winter that I'm going to off myself. Like, I can't take another winter. And then I thought, well, I had such a glorious summer, and then fall, I had never been more aware of the beauty of fall. And so I thought, why don't I try that with winter and just take it as is? And it's really been not terrible, especially this week with the snowstorms scraping off my car. I'm just, well, it is what it is. You just scrape your car, get in your car, and drive. And it's really been so much more easy to enjoy life when you just don't fight against the stuff that you can't control. So that's as is.
I was just going to say, the things that really resonate with me are nature. And we accept nature as it is, and that's why it's so profound for us, is when we try to landscape it and make it something different that was never quite right. And so the most beautiful things in this world are as is.
And you're looking up the blue sky, and there's a big puffy cloud. And you go, wow, that's one ugly, misshapen cloud. We don't do that, do we? That's a cloud. And we embrace it in its cloudness. Yeah. So how do we do this? I mean, how do we start embracing things and ourselves as we are? And I think it starts with a shift of perspective. It starts with a new openness to self and others. Frank Ostanesky goes on, he calls this welcoming everything, pushing away nothing. welcoming everything, pushing away nothing. And he writes that in the Buddhist way of thinking, openness is how we actually discover reality instead of trying to determine it. That openness doesn't reject or get attached to any particular experience or view. It is spacious, undefended, non-biased, and allowing. A total acceptance. Openness is the nature of awareness itself. And that nature allows us and allows experience to unfold. So have there been things in our lives where we were so resistant to it that it wasn't allowed to unfold? Anybody have an example?
I love geology. Finally in a geology class and I'm hating it, and I think it's just I'm fully resisting how the teacher teaches.
When I got divorced 6 years ago, my whole world changed, and the last 6 years I've been resisting reality, trying to form it and change it the way that I want to, and I've been resisting so much that I have lost touch and have just not embraced reality until the last few months.
We cited a quote from Jung a couple of Sundays ago, where he says, "That which I resist persists." Something interesting about human psyche and how we work.
I was just gonna say, like, basically my whole life, I kind of never thought I'd go to college, and now I'm like realizing that I'm actually resisting the fact of going to college, and I'm thinking why did is there any reason like I don't want to go to college, and I can't figure out a reason, but I'm like so against the fact of going to college, and I don't know why.
So openness also equates something else. It equates vulnerability, doesn't it? How many of us are comfortable with vulnerability? Most of us are not. Because everybody's response to that one. Okay? It can even be more challenging depending on how you were raised, the family you came from. But see, that's where I see Buddhism as where it's talked about the warrior path. The warrior path is not about this like violence. It's the courage to be vulnerable, the courage for this radical openness and allowing ourselves to see ourselves as we are. That takes a lot of courage. Right? And this is where meditation comes in. Especially this being able to embrace ourselves as is. And I love this quote from Charlie Ambler. He says, "Underneath all your thoughts about yourself and the world is who you really are." One more time. Underneath all your thoughts about yourself and the world is who you really are. What do you think of that?
I think that's the thing we almost, I think that's the thing a lot of us spend our whole life running from.
Yeah.
Or looking for.
Or looking for. And usually we're looking for it in the noisy places. Aren't we?
Sometimes we have glimpses of it, and
Oh, yeah.
there's just so much we run really fast.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I think this is what I was trying to say earlier, that, we pick up these skills that we identify ourselves with. Why? We have been human from birth on. I mean, if muscle memory is anywhere, it should be here, right? But yet we why do we doubt ourselves? Why do we allow other influences to basically define who we are?
So if you think about the stories we have about ourselves, about the world, that's noise. It's noise getting in the way from us actually hearing our own heartbeat. Right? And we live in that noise. And if anything, we build up that noise, and we create more stories and more stories, and we defend one story with another story with another story, and then this story comes down, we create another story over here. And you know what? Most of these stories aren't really very nice. The stories we tell about ourselves. Some are, but the ones that really get into our belly, the ones that really we struggle with, are not those positive stories that we tell of self, because somehow they feel a little bit like a mask. So he goes on to say that this essence, this ability to get underneath these thoughts of ourselves in the world, to see who we really are, does not require any conceptualization. If you're alive, you can access this realization. He says to meditate without any effort or direction is to get to know this version of yourself. Without this knowledge, we wander through the world confused, unbalanced, and I like to say exhausted. But here's an important thing. If we don't spend time with ourselves, how are we going to get to know ourselves? So some of us may say, I know myself pretty good. I kind of like myself. How many of us can sit in a car without having the radio on and just drive to work? Just in silence. Okay? Now, some of us do that as a practice. How many of us, when we find ourselves alone, with nothing to do, no one to talk to, find it very hard not to turn on the TV, not to turn on our smartphone, and flip through Facebook, listen to music even. How many of us, how often do we spend in silence with ourselves?
But like the tricky part, when you do spend some silence with yourself, your mind just floods with the stories and talking to yourself, and so you have to also get past that.
Yes. Yes. And that's one of the reasons I think why we don't. Because a lot of those stories are made bare. It's harder to be complicit in them as we become more aware of them. Okay? Let's go on.
Christopher, this dichotomy of we really only know ourselves in relation to others.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, we shouldn't be taking into account what others are thinking. I mean, it's sort of always this.
It's a paradox.
I know, right?
It's a constant paradox.
Well,
And one of the things that you'll notice in Buddhism is it's the embracing of the paradox. Because our mind is a conceptual mind, and what we're talking about is an experiencing self that's beyond conception of dualities. So the paradox is kind of where we live.
Well, I think the big reward once you get past those stories of yourself is now you have the idea of, am I egotistical? Am I too confident? Am I reaching cockiness? Because now I believe in myself. And then you have that like sort of Western,
Monkey mind?
I don't know, the culture, I guess, is what I'm looking for, that makes you feel a little, bad, if you will, for feeling confident in yourself.
Yeah.
So, it's a balance.
Well, and it would be great to have these problems to be able, it'd be a great problem to have, to say, now what do I do now that I see my stories? Because most of us aren't even there. We're not even having that dialogue with ourselves. And what is inherent. There's nothing inherently wrong with a story that is aligned with reality as it is. It's that most of our stories and the relation we have with our stories of ourselves are not based in any objective reality. Okay? Chongyam Trungpa Rinpoche teaches us that the purpose of meditation is to make friends with ourselves. Okay? The purpose of meditation is to make friends with ourselves. it's kind of interesting as Westerners, we think meditation is to control the mind. Take a sword and cut out our thoughts because they're bad. We need to have a blank brain. That's not really what it's about. It's about befriending the self that is underneath all the thoughts about yourself in the world.
So it seems like it's almost an endless process of accepting things about me or about what I think, about what I believe, and accepting them, and then letting go, and accepting and letting go, and accepting and letting go. And the enlightenment, when you get to the point where you accepted everything and let it all go, when does that happen? Does it happen before you die and have to let go of everything anyway? That's exhausting.
That's why I love, as you walk in on the pillar, we have Nichi Nichi Koriko Jitsu, which is Japanese for every day is a good day. And, I mean, from a dualistic mind, no, it's not. Some days are really crappy. And other days are ecstatically wonderful. But I think from an ultimate perspective, the way I look at it is every day is a good day because every day is a day I can practice. I can practice the way. Every day I wake up, every day I'm alive, whether it's outstandingly beautiful or it's dark and dreary, I can practice. And that's what makes every day a beautiful day.
One thing that I often think about along those lines is the relationship between crisis and opportunity, and how they're essentially one begets the other if you have the right mindset. I was with someone just yesterday who I care about deeply, and they broke their leg in 3 different places, and I was there when it happened, and it was gruesome, to say the least, but we were immediately in this very peaceful place of looking at, we're already on the mend, and we're in the right place for the right treatment. So you have the switch of crisis and opportunity or into your life.
Yeah, and it literally is this perspective, this shift of perspective. And this idea of meditation being a process of befriending your mind, befriending yourself, to become your own best friend, is part of the practice. I like what Nathan Nichtern, he wrote a book that we used in our Inner Buddhism course, and he talks specifically about it. He says, for transformation to take place, we have to actually make friends with our mind. We have to learn to like ourselves. This is the opposite of a get-rich scheme. There is no product we can purchase to aid this work. It only comes from the willingness to be with yourself, nakedly, openly, and lovingly, again and again and again over long periods of time. Which means we have to spend time with ourselves, a lot of time. The time we spend with ourselves on the cushion is the opposite of passive. It is often tough. It's usually intense. And it leads to a hard-fought, slow-won, and revolutionary victory over self-hatred. We can actually come to like ourselves. Liking yourself is the result of acceptance. To call acceptance radical, as Tara Brach does, is actually a severe understatement. So here are some basics when sitting in silent meditation or chanting. Welcome what you notice. Practice relaxed awareness. All kinds of things will arise. All kinds of stories of who you are and what you are. Fears, happy thoughts, self-judgments. Welcome everything. Push away nothing. Invite them in for a cup of tea, a small cup of tea. Give them a hug. They're a part of your life, and they are okay. Your brain is going 1,000 miles an hour. Gasho to it. Give it a hug. And always remember the wise words of Young. That which I resist persists. Let's take Thich Nhat Hanh's instruction to heart when he teaches us to build a home inside by accepting yourself and learning to love and heal yourself. And we do this, and we get to know ourselves underneath all of those thoughts about ourselves and the world, and those stories bind us. We start to become aware of our innate boundlessness, our innate original perfection. This original perfection is the ability to see perfection in non-perfection. As one teacher puts it, it's about recognizing that enlightenment or mature spirituality looks exactly like your life right now, exactly as it is. It's about recognizing that who you are before enlightenment looks remarkably like you are after enlightenment. It's about being true to the way things are, being true to ourselves. Jack Kornfeld described it by saying, instead of clinging to an inflated, superhuman view of perfection, we learn how to allow ourselves space for kindness. When we embrace our original perfection, we are free from comparison. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others. It was Teddy Roosevelt who said, comparison is the thief of happiness. Charlotte Joko Beck said, the tendency of your mind is to compare yourself to others or to some impossible idea and to judge every little thing you do as imperfect or inadequate. It just keeps you anxious, frustrated, and upset. Generally, this tendency originates in your stories or life script, a deeply held cluster of often negative beliefs. After all, if you believe that you are lovable and inherently perfect just the way you are, your mind has nothing to compare you with. There's a Jodo Shin poem, which I've always liked, and I want to share it with you now. And every once in a while I argue with it. And I think if it's a good poem, you probably have that kind of relationship with it. And I'll just read it. You, as you are, you're just right. Your face, body, name, surname, for you, they are just right. Whether poor or rich, your parents, your children, your daughter-in-law, your grandchildren, they are all for you just right. Happiness, unhappiness, joy, and even sorrow, for you, they are just right. The life that you have tread is neither good nor bad. For you, it is just right. Whether you go to hell or go to the Pure Land, whether you go is just right. Nothing to boast about, nothing to feel bad about, nothing above, nothing below. Even the day and month that you die, even they are just right. Life in which you walk together with Amita, there's no way that it can't be just right. When you receive your life as is, as just right, then a deep and profound trust begin to open up. In Japanese, the word is sonomama, which means as is or suchness, that we embrace our life as is. I think the closer we come to ourselves, to who we really are, we begin to really realize our true nature. Their true nature is beyond the relative. I think we come to know ourselves through our relationship to others, and we get to a point where we transcend that notion of other, and we become to experience oneness. And I want to close with a quote from Reverend Kiyozawa. He was a Shin modernist. And he said, what is the self? The self is no other than this. my settling down into this environment, letting naturalness carry me, riding the unbounded workings of myriad phenomena. And last he says, who am I? I am nothing but this moment in the flow of life. This flow of life is not in my control. It is the life of the universe itself. The life of the universe flows in me, and I just flow with this life, and that is myself. The unbounded experience of the present moment is being here, now. Being and time and now are all the same. May we become friends with ourselves as is. Carl Rogers said, the only way I can change is by accepting myself. Then change is possible. May we accept ourselves just as we truly are. May we all meet there in being, time, and now. Namo Amida Butsu. And Namo Amida Butsu. Have a beautiful Sunday.
Oh, we found Andrew earlier.
Congratulations, right?
Stop copying.
Yeah.